for this discussion and live investigation. I don't know if you all know this about me, but I am a huge Sherlock Holmes fan. I love the books. I love all the movies, the TV shows, and even the Sherlock Holmes inspired characters like House and Bones. Basically, I'm just a big fan. And today we all get to play Dr. Watson to our fascinating expert speaker, who is here to help us investigate current trends in internet risk and uncover clues, i.e. years and years of data that will help us uncover and measure potential threats or gaps in your security program. Now, don't worry, Watson. I will introduce our Sherlock Holmes in just a moment here. But before we jump into this investigation, I want to take a moment to review a few of the housekeeping things that you should know. Think of this as the background info in our case file. Let me set the scene for you all. Your first clue to a successful investigation is the questions section of your webinar console. Now, the absolute best part of a webinar like this is the chance to ask questions directly of an expert like we have here with us today. We're all exploring the mysteries of internet risk together, so make sure that you get your questions into that questions tab. And if we're unable to get to your question during the live Q&A session, don't worry. The Censys team will be following up with you after the webinar wraps today. A quick reminder that the questions console is also a great place to say hi to all your fellow detectives out there in the audience today. You can also use that tab to connect with the actual tech media team if you do have any technical issues during the session, knock on wood, of course. Don't forget that a browser refresh should get rid of any of the usual tech gremlins, but if not, just shoot us a message and we will be there to help you out. Okay, your next clue in our investigation today is that handout section right next to the questions tab in your console. Open that up and check out some of the exciting content that we have for you to go along with the webinar today. Be sure to explore and download those for later. And hey, it's not just awesome content that we're giving away. We also have a $300 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live webinar to qualify for the prize, and all winners must meet the actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that handouts tab that we were just chatting about. Just click in and scroll down to the bottom. Okay, now I know that this crew will not need any additional nudging to ask questions, but hey, we like curiosity here. So today we will also be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked during the webinar. Now I want to remind you that the team is reviewing all questions asked after we wrap, which means that even if your question does not get read out during our live Q&A, there's still a chance to win. And as always, we will reach out to via email to our lucky winner after the webinar wraps today. Okay, now I know that you are as impatient as I am to get started, so let's dive right in. I am very excited to introduce our head investigator and guide. You can think of him as our Sherlock Holmes for today's investigation, Kaz Green, Product Marketing Manager at Censys. Kaz, thank you so much for being here today. I know that you have a lot of great content to cover, and we are all so pumped to hear more about the data that Censys has collected and how we can use it to enhance our own security programs. This is one mystery I know we're all excited to solve. So without any further ado, take it away, Kaz.
Thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Kaz, and I am on the product marketing team here at Censys. Today's webinar, a live investigation with Censys Search, is going to be a little bit different from the things we've done in the past. This is meant to be a lot more informative, a lot more helpful in showing you some of the cool things that we have found on the internet. And ultimately, how do we take this information and use it in our own worlds, use it in our own day-to-day to make our security teams, our security programs that much stronger. So really quickly, who is Censys? Well, we are the inventors of internet-wide scanning. We were founded by the creators of ZMAP, and since 2014, the beginning of that project, we have really doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on that investment of being the best source of truth of anything that goes on the internet. We have really focused on building out a really robust infrastructure that allows us to scan the entire internet very fast, very quickly, very thoroughly, and on a repeatable basis. And that led itself to the founding of what is now Censys. We've done a couple rounds of funding. We have a lot of great partners, both in the investment side and on the customer side. And we really are focused on taking all this information that we collect, taking all this internet data, and serving it up to our customers in ways that helps them, make your security team, your organization a lot more secure. And so a little bit more on that. We are scanning from 5 different perspectives across the globe, giving us the most comprehensive coverage. And every single day we're touching every port or every host on the IPv4 space on 3,500 plus ports, right? So it's very comprehensive. Again, like I said, using a couple of cool things like automatic protocol detection, which I'll get into. And since the beginning of this whole process, we have accumulated the largest certificate repository on the market at 8 billion plus and counting. It may be a little bit higher than that now. And so all this data, all this rich information that we have collected lends itself now to our 2 different products that we have, right? So Censys Search, which we'll get into today, is really just being able to, query this data set, understand what's out there on the internet. You can use this in a lot of different use cases, which I'll get into today. And then Censys ASM, which is an attack surface management tool, really focused on helping you understand, what is your internet footprint? How can you better defend yourself? And what are the kind of exposures and risks that go along with that? So, like I said, this is not going to be the typical webinar. This is going to be a much more informative thing. So we'll just get right into the demo. But what are we going to do today? We want to find hacked web servers that are out there on the internet for a lot of different reasons. But first and foremost, web servers are very commonly involved or affected in security breaches and security incidents. So it's low-hanging fruit, so to speak. So we want to investigate these, see what information we can glean, and then will that help us, become stronger as a security organization. So I'm going to pop over to Censys Search. And so like I said, this is our data offering essentially, right? Censys Search. You can find your way here at search.censys.io. And one of the really cool things about this is these accounts are completely free, right? You can log in or you can create an account right now as we're going through this video and search along with me. I think you'll get 250 queries a month, which is more than enough, especially if you're just, checking it out or poking around. There's also obviously ways to access, larger amounts of data, but please log in here, create an account. There's a lot of really cool stuff in here. And so let's kind of start digging into what we have. Really quickly, I just want to show just how much data is available, right? So right now, all I did was basically open the book, right? I didn't put in any particular query. I'm just looking at what is available. Tons of different hosts. You can see a bunch of different location data, a lot of services, ports, software. It really runs a full gamut in terms of what is available. So the first thing we need to do for this particular investigation is really narrow the scope, because if we're just trying to find hacked web servers by looking at all these different hosts, it's going to literally be a needle in a haystack. We will never make it, right? So let's start to refine the scope a little bit. And we're going to do that by building some queries. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to focus this investigation on all of the hosts I see that are at least running HTTP, right? And so as I type this, you can start to see some of the different fields that we have available. I may have mentioned this, but it's 14 or 1500 individual parsable fields that we have. So there's a lot of potential for different types of investigations, different criteria being involved. So it really does help to start to narrow this down. So first thing I'm going to do is I want everything that is running HTTP. And then the next thing is we are going to reserve this investigation for web servers that have very clear indications of being hacked. And by that, I mean we're going to look for anything that has a hacker signature on it, right? So hacked by so-and-so. Usually those will show up in the HTML title. Sometimes we'll have to look within the HTTP response body itself. But in this case, we're going to use the HTML title. It's usually pretty fast. It's pretty easy to identify. And then we'll see where that lands us. So I'm going to add a second part to this query by adding an and statement. And then again, this is where I'm going to actually use the suggested queries because I cannot remember these off the top of my head, nor should I be able to because there are so many. So we are looking again, like I said, for the HTML title. So if I scroll all the way down here, we should see it pop up. All right, so HTML title. And then we can specify something that we want to be in that title, right? So in this case, we're going to have a string that says hacked by, right? So this would be our version of looking for a hacker signature anywhere within those HTML titles. So I'm going to run this query. I forgot to do one thing. So you'll see there's 843 results. One thing I also want to make sure we do is include virtual hosts as well. That will expand this data set. It'll also be much more representative of what we're actually looking for. So I did that. I reran the query, and so now we're up to 14,000 total results. So just to recap, all we've done so far is located every single host that is running HTTP. You'll notice also that there is no port number that we specified. So that's one of the beauties about the data that we collect and the way that we're scanning. I talked about automatic protocol detection. Essentially what that means is we will look for whatever service is running on the port regardless of the port number, right? So there's HTTP on tons of different ports besides 443 and port 80. This is a very crucial methodology for being able to uncover and discover all of these services on the internet. Just a quick note, I want to say around 60-ish% of all of the services that Censys has observed are on non-standard port and protocol pairings, right? So SSH is not always going to be on port 22. HTTP in this example is not always going to be on port 80 or port 443. So 60% obviously is the majority of the internet, but just think about that, right? If you are only scanning in one particular fashion, you could be missing a lot of information. So Censys, we do the kind of port agnostic approach or automatic protocol detection, but that's really what we're uncovering here, right? Is there HTTP running? I don't care what port it's on. I just want to know that it's there. And then also, so the hacked by is still in the HTML title, which you can see some of these are popping up as well. So now that we have started our investigation, I always like to make sure I'm on the right path. So the first thing I want to do is just validate some of these hosts, validate that these are indeed web servers and we have kind of honed into the right area. So because these are also assumed to have been hacked or compromised, we want to make sure we access them in a very smart way. So I'm going to use proxy chains. So I opened up a terminal. I'm going to use proxy chains. You can use a VPN, you can use Tor, whatever you want to do, but I just want to validate this data before I go down a path and realize, oh wait, I'm looking at something that's completely wrong. So proxy chains is pretty simple. You just use a curl command, and I'm just going to grab one of these hosts. So in this case, I'll do this host right here. So 185.179.2611. Let's see if I got that. Oh, got it. Nice. Right, so I'll run this. And all we're looking for here is you can see the HTML tags, just indicators, clues that this is indeed probably serving up a website. So we're on the right track, right? If in the kind of other case, if this did not appear to be something I was looking for, then we'd go back to the drawing board. We'd go back to the query, kind of mess with that a little bit and try and get honed into the right area. So this particular host looks good. I'll check out another one just for the sake of it. Let's do this one down here. So run the same command, pop this in there. Okay, this one's a little bit more robust, but you still see the HTML tags. It looks like it is indeed a website. You can even see their hacked by signature showing up in the title. But again, just really verifying on my side that I am indeed finding the information that I want to find. And if not, there's tons of ways that we can manipulate this query, add criteria, remove criteria, kind of open or close the aperture, if you will, just to make sure that we're locating the right data. So now that we've done this, we still have a lot of information, right? 14,000 different hosts or different results. even on some of these hosts, there's HTTP running on multiple ports. We want to focus this a little bit more. So one of the easier ways to visualize this data is to leverage the reports. So the reports are really cool because you can start to take all that information that we just found and then parse it out in different ways, right? So in this case, I'm going to look for if there's any trends in software, because obviously vulnerable software is a very popular attack vector, regardless of the software version and type. So I just want to start there, right? I'm still not entirely sure what I'm looking for, but I'm trying to look for things that are easily identifiable, things that I can take back and, maybe help with help on my side of the house when I'm looking at my own infrastructure and identify places that I could potentially be vulnerable, right? So I'm going to actually look for the software that is running. And so this is where the suggestions really help out. So we will do software vendor. So all I'm doing, and then I'm going to drop this down to 25. I'm just saying take all the data that we found, looking for all the hosts running HTTP with hacked by in their HTML title, and then group them by the software that we see running, right? So I'll build this report, and you'll see this is a much easier way to look at everything, especially now that I see, okay, there's a ton of Apache that I see going on, or I see being presented or running on these hosts. So maybe we can start to dig into that next, right? Or, for example, there's a bunch of Nginx, a bunch of Debian. Either way, now I can see, okay, there's a larger chunk that has some common feature characteristic. That's probably where I want to point my investigation next. So what I'm going to do for that is we can actually just take this query that we have crafted and then add it to the query that we have up here, right? So what that would look like is I'm going to add another and statement. And then we're going to add this, can't type. The software. And then we will do equals Apache. Okay, so now we've kind of boiled this down to 7,000, right? So we went from 16,000 to 7,000. Again, you can't just go at this and start poking through the data willy-nilly. It's really helpful to kind of be methodical in that way. But still 7,000 is quite a bit, so I want to look at the report again. But this time, since I know all of the software will be some sort of Apache, I want to actually just look at the specific versions, right? So we're going to do a similar chart here, and let me just jump down to the bottom. But now I want it to be grouped out by version, and again I'm going to drop this down just so it gives you that nice bar chart view. So let me build this report. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now again, this is all of the hosts that we see that are running HTTP on any port. In the HTML title we see the string hacked by. So it's a very clear indication that someone has compromised this particular web server. We are looking for anything that is running Apache as well, right? So all that criteria is now broken up by the actual version of Apache that we're seeing. So a couple things are jumping out to me. One is the vast majority are running Apache 2.2.22. Apache 2.2 is all end of life, right? So if the majority of these hosts are running end of life software, to me that's kind of setting off alarm bells like, okay, this is something that in theory should have been easy to address, but there's a lot of reasons why this could potentially be out there. So I'm going to kind of bookmark that and think, okay, maybe I want to come back here. As we scroll down, again, a lot of versions of Apache that are out of date or end of life, right? So another 2.2. Some of these versions, again, we're grabbing this data from the banner, so in some cases the complete version may not be fully visible. all this data is what's visible to Censys from our scanning perspectives. So sometimes it's not going to be a complete version number, but we can do a lot of different tricks behind the scenes to help kind of infer what is running. 1.6, I mean, that's also a very, very old version. So what I'm seeing here is there's a lot of potentially end of life or actual end of life Apache that could have been the initial attack vector or initial reason for compromise, right? And just from kind of like a attack surface perspective, to switch gears slightly, usually when we see end of life software, these are hosts, these are assets that fall into a couple different categories, often multiple categories. Something that has been forgotten, right? So you created it a long time ago, and you just completely forgot that it existed and it's on the internet. So it's just out there. Whether or not it has super critical data within it, who knows? But there's something that's just out there. It's connected to your organization, but people have just forgotten that it existed. Another one is that they are just completely unknown, right? So, and this is an example we give all the time. A marketing department or HR or a developer needs to spin up an instance, spin up a website, create a test environment, whatever it may be, and they forget to bring it down, right? Or they circumvent, the traditional kind of IT process, the traditional security process. So it's out there, but you as a security professional, you don't know that it exists. So it's not going to get the TLC, right? The tender love and care that all of your assets should be receiving. So that's another kind of bucket it could fall into, either unknown or forgotten. Either way, these are not being patched, clearly. These are not most likely being managed, which is just leaving the door open, right? And from the most recent Verizon DBIR report, web servers are the most frequently affected asset in security breaches, right? And it's for good reason, right? They're easy to create, they're easy to forget about, they're easy to find if you're an attacker. They are very abundant. They're on the internet, which makes the accessibility very high from that perspective. So there's a lot of reasons why you'd want to focus in on your web servers and your web server hygiene. And within that, a lot of the risks that Censys has observed, 60% of them are simple misconfigurations, right? So it's not necessarily always going to be, end of life software or some 0-day vulnerability that we had no foresight into. Some of these things are very simple, self-signed certificates, very simple, weak, unauthenticated login pages, right? So basic hygiene can help quite a bit as well, right? So that's just kind of why, what this means to me as I'm looking at this from a perspective of how can I defend my organization. But I want to get a little bit more information, right? So we've figured out that, maybe we want to look at all of our web servers that are running an end-of-life version of Apache, and let's address those first and foremost. You can take this exact query, if you are a Censys ASM customer, you can leverage it in there, run it against your inventory, and it'll pull back all the hosts that fit this criteria. So it's really easy to go back and forth here. But if not, there's a lot of other ways that you can leverage this as well. But so that's kind of still a little bit high level, right? And a little bit, we're making some assumptions too, right? That this was indeed the version or the reason that these web servers were hacked. So I want to just double click, triple click, I guess, on the specific version that is 2.2.22, and see what else we can understand, what else we can learn about these hacked web servers. So I'm going to add one final criteria to our query, so another and statement, and then again we're going to do software. This time we're going to do version. Oops, wrong query. We're going to do version, and then we're going to go 2.2.22, and we'll run that. So now 31 hosts, right? We went from, and I want to make sure that we still have virtual hosts are included. We went from everything on the internet, down to, I want to say it was 16,000 hosts. Focused in on 7,000 hosts that are running Apache, and now we're on to 31 hosts that have this specific version. So we've gotten very, very narrow within our scope, which is exactly what we want to do, because now this information is actually usable. And now we can do a little bit of kind of forensic analysis, right? What can we learn from these hacked web servers? What can we learn that can help us potentially write detections, potentially, take this back and defend ourselves a little bit better. So in this case, we're just going to pick a host. I'm going to pick this one in France. And we're just going to look at what else what other data is available, right? So we'll always show the last time we scanned. So we scan very, very frequently, like I said. We always want the data to be as fresh as possible. Acting, learning, defending based on stale data. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but it's just, it's not a good idea. I'm sure everyone has dealt with that before. But we'll provide a little map just so you can see where it is. But there's also all of this other information that we haven't really even touched, right? So you can see all the different ports open. So there's an open SSH port. Though we did see that outdated version of Apache. This open SSH port, that is also a very popular avenue for attackers to gain access to your infrastructure. So we're not going to rule that out too, right? This is kind of the forensic analysis piece where we can start to learn, what are mistakes that other people may have made that led to this result. So SSH, right? Let's take note of that. Let's maybe prioritize that a little bit. Here we also see the Apache that we're looking for. And then we're seeing other services, MySQL exposure as well. There's a lot of data, right? And so if we open up one of these, this is where we have the rest of the scan data, the rest of those fields that I was mentioning available. And so you can see there is so much that we could potentially play with. This is where you're seeing the HTML title, the hacked by that we were looking for. But there's so much information that we can begin to use, pivot off of, refine our scope, refine our searches, and that goes for also all the different services. So not just HTTP, but in this case we have port map, we have MySQL, like we mentioned. We scroll back up to the top, we'll have SSH as well. So now, it's really kind of up to you. What more do you want to understand? What more do you want to dig into? How much more do you need before you feel like, okay, I can take some of these learnings and then go apply them to my own security environment? But that's really the power of Censys search. That's really the power of being able to investigate, have all this at your fingertips, and understand in this case, the behavior of hacked web servers that we're seeing. So that's all I had today in terms of the demo. A couple things. This was just one example, right? You can tailor this to any use case, any particular investigation that you want to run. And if you ever do, have questions on what are the queries that I should build, how do I, point into this one direction, or how do I dig into this one particular space, visit support.censys.io. We have very detailed documentation on this query language specifically. It's really not hard to pick up. The biggest challenge, and you saw this as I was going through it, is just remembering all of the different fields that are at your disposal. But we have really great support documents. And if you create an account, you'll also be able to interact with our customer success team. They are super, super helpful, very sharp folks over there as well. So please jump on here, create an account, poke around, see what you can learn. There's a lot of cool stuff on the internet. And I think this is a really, really fun thing to do. If you got some free time, or maybe you're trying to learn some things about, what's going on out there. Censys Search is a great place to start. So create an account. It's totally free, like I mentioned, and happy searching.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that's such a cool reminder, Cause, to always be learning. You know, that was a key element of this webinar today is just taking some time to explore together. So, Cause, thank you so much for an awesome presentation and demo, and kind of helping us look at through some of these things. You know, I said at the top that we would all be playing Dr. Watson to your Sherlock Holmes in this investigation, and I think we all feel like that was pretty successful. So, thank you for that, Cause.
Yeah, awesome. Hopefully, people got some use out of that. But that was really fun. That was a different type of webinar than we've done in the past, but I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and I think we got a couple of high fives from the audience as well. So I think that is resonating, and as you said, it's important to stop sometimes and not just purely think about solutions, but maybe think a little bit more about the information and the trends and the reasoning behind it. So that was I really enjoyed that. I think the audience did as well. We have a few. Justin, tell me what music you want at the start, and we'll bring it in. Okay, well, Justin's deciding what theme songs we should have for our music. Let's go ahead and jump into some of these questions. I see a lot of questions coming in. Cause, you ready to jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, sweet. Well, I want to start with, I have to say, by the way, Davin, you get a gold star for volume today as well as quality. Great questions coming in from you, Davin. So thank you for that. Let's start with this one because you know what? I think it's a good one to just kind of jump into. Davin's wondering, how does Censys differentiate itself? What's unique about Censys?
Good question. So hopefully this came through in the demo, but really the biggest differentiators that we'll always fall back on is just our ability to scan more of the internet more frequently and more comprehensively than all of our other competitors. So the data quality, the data freshness, and then the depth of data, right? Those 1,400 parsable fields, all that in itself just lends itself to having really, really high quality products and services on top of that. So it will always come back for us to our scanning efficacy. Like I said in the beginning, that's kind of the bread and butter, the foundation of the company is we can scan faster, we can scan more comprehensively than anybody. And I know, I am in product marketing and take that for what it's worth, but just as kind of like an outside source, if you guys are familiar with a company called Gray Noise, they just put out a really cool article that highlights some of those capabilities of ours where they were basically trying to understand the behavior of benign scanners on the internet. If you go check that out, you'll see that what I'm saying is not necessarily just for show. Like we are actually scanning very frequently and more comprehensively than anyone else out there.
I love that. All right. Well, that probably connects in well with this next one here. So is Censys compatible with scanning IPv6 network space or just IPv4?
Oh, good question again. IPv6, yes, we have started doing that. It's not nearly as comprehensive as our IPv4 data set for multiple reasons, but yeah, if you go into Censys search, you can see, I think we're at about 50 million-ish hosts in the IPv6 space. So it's coming along. We're by no means making claims that we have it all figured out. It's a really complex problem, but IPv6 and then IPv4 are definitely within our wheelhouse.
Okay, sweet. I'm going to combine two questions because Ivan was asking about if the search support, does search support regular expression? But I also want to connect that in because we did get another question about timing for scans in terms of frequency. Can you talk to us about are we talking daily, weekly? What's the frequency that we're scanning?
Yeah. So the scanning, what I talked about in the beginning of the presentation is we scan regularly 3,597 ports. Within that, there's a methodology to make sure we're having the highest coverage possible. So the 141 most popular ports, we scan those every single day. And then the remaining, 3,500 minus 140, we'll get to those on about a weekly basis. That being said, we do increase the frequency in the cloud. So in the cloud, we will bump it up to the 1,400 most popular ports, and we actually scan those twice a day. So a couple different things going on there, but what it boils down to is every single day we are out there scanning Our data is very, very fresh. And what was the second part of that question?
Does the search support regular expression?
Oh, yes, it totally does. Yeah, so I could have done that investigation starting with just hacked by and seen what came up. So yes, regular expressions are supported. There's also an API and a command line tool that you can use to access the data as well. So lots of different ways to poke around, but yes, very easy to query.
So easy to do and easy to set your time frames.
Yep.
And make sure that you've got that frequency that you need. Okay, love that. All right, is Censys compatible for scanning OT and IoT things?
Yes, it
Or
is. So
IoT things,
anything,
IoT devices, doubling
right?
up on
Yeah.
things there.
Anything that's on the internet, Censys will be able to detect. So whether it's an OT or IoT device, or it's just typical cloud infrastructure or on-prem infrastructure, we will be able to capture it if it's on the internet. And one of the next tasks on our roadmap is device labeling. So you can go into Censys search, and as you pull up results, you'll be able to see, hey, this is maybe this is, we see a lot of Roombas online for whatever reason. Maybe this is a Roomba that you're looking at, or maybe this is like a door control panel that you're seeing. So device labeling is next, but yes, anything on the internet, IoT, OT, traditional infrastructure, that will be captured within our data set.
And how many ports are you capable of scanning? And I guess how many are regularly scanned was the part two of that question.
Yeah, so at 3,500, I want to say it's 3,597 is what we're at for regular scanning. That being said, we have the ability to scan all 64,000 in the IPv4 space. Usually that going out that far doesn't yield much more results, just kind of diminishing returns. But 3,500 plus is a number that you can just keep in mind for that.
Perfect. Okay. Here's one that actually just came in, Paul. I'm going to read it out instantly. How comprehensive is the Censys data set? And can this data set help with management of edge computing, like Internet of Things, like we were just talking about, attack surfaces?
So that is that. Yes, we can, but not as comprehensively as probably you'd be expecting, right? So, again, some edge devices are a little bit harder to detect. So there, like I mentioned, if it's on the internet, we can find it. In terms of managing the IoT and edge computing attack surfaces, that is a problem that we're still trying to figure out a good way of solving. So not as of yet, but there will be some individual assets that you can definitely find within our data.
It sounds like that might be a good thing to have a conversation with you guys about,
Yeah,
specific needs
definitely.
and where you can meet that. Okay. I have a question for you, and actually in our handouts tab, and I'm going to mention this later too, we have a report from you guys about the state of the internet in 2022. And, we talked a little bit about at the top, part of what we've been talking about today are identifying these risks on the internet. And I'm wondering, are you seeing any trends in that report, or, trends in internet risk, that you want to call out? And were there any that maybe surprised you or that you found specifically interesting?
Yeah, so I mean, before I do that, definitely go check out the report. It sounds like it's in the handout, so read through that. It's really cool. We spent a lot of time putting that together. It's basically, I think it's like 10 months worth of daily snapshot data of the internet, and basically trying to understand different trends. But so check it out. And something that definitely surprised me when the report was published is that the makeup of the internet, I know everyone is moving to cloud, and cloud is the biggest thing out there. Um, Based on what we saw, only 9% of the internet as a whole is hosted by a cloud provider, or is hosted within a cloud provider's environment, which was really surprising to me, especially again, how abundant AWS is. You see commercials for them, every time you turn on the TV. But what that means to me is that space is only going to grow. So as we need to defend ourselves, need to be able to move quicker, and understanding exactly what we do own, the cloud's only going to grow, right? 9%, that's a lot of room for growth. So that was something that really caught my attention that I was not expecting. I would have expected that number to be a lot higher.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really interesting. That's a cool. Well, see, there you go. There's lots more. We've solved a few mysteries today, and there's even more waiting for you in that report. So hopefully, there's a link on your screen right now that should work. There's also a link in the handouts tab. So I hope you guys go and check that out. Cause is there anyone out there in the audience that this information doesn't apply to? Is this going to apply to any size enterprise, any industry vertical?
I think this applies to anyone and everyone. Like cybersecurity has become the hottest topic there is right now, for good reason. Especially Census Search, right? Like this is a tool that you can go on and just educate yourself, learn more things. Take it back to work if you want. If not, that's totally fine as well. But I think this absolutely applies to everyone. The more we can do, the more information we can have to help defend ourselves, the better off we'll be.
So on that note, if there was one thing that you want everyone to kind of walk away from this webinar thinking about, mulling over, asking themselves, what would that be, Cos?
I think a great question to ask is, do I have the data? Do I have the information that I need to be successful in my job? Internet scanning data is something that is obviously publicly available, but it's hard to collect in this fashion. So, ask yourself that question: am I able to supplement the work that I'm doing with the information that I need? And if not, on the screen again, there's a link to go to Census Search. Please create a free account. Like I said, free, 250 queries a month. That's enough to do quite a bit of work. There's also always ways to bump up that usage, get access to data downloads and things like that. But just for starters, log on, check us out. We have a lot of cool stuff going on. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I love that. Well, and you already answered my next question, which was how do people get started? So there you go. Click on the button there and jump in and kind of start exploring. And I think you raise a great question, because for ourselves, do we have the data and information we need? And if you run a team, now would be a good time to do an inventory. Check in with the folks in your team, and do they have the information that they need? Do they have the data that they need? Do they feel confident that they have the information at their fingertips? And if not, then maybe it's time to start looking for a solution to that, or definitely it's time to start looking for a solution. So reach out to Censys, get some more info. Cause this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I am going to flip over to this slide here because I know what you are all waiting for. Before we head out today, we have a little bit more excitement to add to an already absolutely thrilling webinar. It is time for a prize giveaway. Now, I'm going to remind you all that you must be present at the live webinar today to win. So today's winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Vincenzo Vaccarella from Illinois. Vincenzo Vaccarella from Illinois. Great name, Vincenzo. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. I do want to remind you all to go and explore the handout section of that webinar console before we go. Talk about a prize. There is some awesome stuff in there, including that internet, the 2022 State of the Internet report. This is so fascinating. This is good information for everyone. Download it, share it. This is a first of its kind report. It's going to give you a global perspective on the internet as a whole. It's such a cool read. So please do check that out, download that, save that for later. And definitely get a little bit more information from some of the trends and things that we were chatting about. Absolutely worth the read. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I really want to thank Censys, and a giant thank you to Cause for making this webinar possible, to Cause for playing Sherlock Holmes with us today, and for sharing some exciting innovations. I also want to send a really big high five and an extra special thank you to all of you. Dr. Watson's out here with us today for attending, for asking some really exciting questions. I know we didn't get to all of them. Those will go to the Censys team, so you will get answers to any questions that we didn't get to today. And you know what? The fun and cheesy literary references aside, and thank you all for indulging me today as I went down that rabbit hole. I really do enjoy these webinars because it gives me an opportunity to connect with all of you, to watch you all connect, maybe learn from some questions that other people are asking, and explore some of these ideas together. So I know that I've gotten a ton out of this discussion. I hope you all have as well. I can't wait to see you all on a webinar again soon. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.